We saw the Australian economy expanded by 0.8 of 1% year on year in the third quarter, and that was easing from a 1.1% over the previous period, and that's coming in less than expected of a 1.1% expansion. So then when we look at that on quarter by quarter basis, what we saw is the economy only expanded by 0.3 of 1% in September. So they weren't good numbers, were they?
No, and so that's why we really wanted to have a good deep dive into it. So this is the real GDP figures you can see on here. Ben on the left-hand side's got the quarter on quarter, which is also the grey sort of Manhattan towers you can see on the other chart, along with the real year-on-year numbers. Now that's coming in at 0.84 of 1%. It's been reported in the media as 0.8. Whichever way you cut it, the only reason we are there is because of public spending. But it is also because private investment and consumption contributed actually nothing year on year to GDP in terms of growth. So there is numbers in there, don't get me wrong, but we understand in terms of growth, the household and the private sector are more than anemic, and they're being completely soaked over by government spending.
They are, and in essence, that's a problem long term.
Yep.
Right. We do not want the government being our investor. We do not want the government being the one, because obviously that's spending money that we don't have.
And just the next chart to bring up then is what and where we sit. A comparison against our major economic peers, and you can see that they are the ones that we should be comparing ourselves against. Yep. That's not a good place to be, where we find ourselves. And I would say you need to be looking at Canada, the UK. I don't normally like using the US because they are different, but yep. Canada and the UK absolutely is who we should be comparing ourselves to. And we are behind those two significantly. We are not the same as Austria, Japan, Finland in terms of what they are.
This is the worst set of numbers in...
So let's have a look at that. So this here is what you also keep hearing about, which is per capita GDP, which is like for like, if you want to use that term, or household GDP, whatever term you want to use. This is comparing, taking out migration and all of those changes that happen with bringing additional resources into the country. This is what is going on. And since records began at the ABS, this has never happened. 7 consecutive quarters, 8 out of the last 9. And all things being equal, that one that's missing, which is the Q4, that will also show that it will be 2 full calendar years of the household going backwards.
So it clearly shows a couple of things. We do need, now one of the things, we've got an aging population, right? Mm-hmm. So the demographic that we're seeing, this retiring demographic, so many people are turning at 65, getting access to cash. We need this younger pool of immigration to come in. We need this new generation of workforce to come in. And usually they're positive for overall GDP. That's why we're seeing the 0.8% rise. But on a per capita basis, something's going wrong.
Yeah.
We are not proficient. We are not producing activity to the level that we need to.
Because that needs to be pointed out. You need to understand that migration is why this country works.
Yes.
Migration is also the reason why we get fresh capital. So despite all the political angles about, trying to slow migration down and the issues around housing, which Ben will talk to you about at the end of this presentation, we need it. Right, we are a migrant country. We use the Seekers song all the way through in terms of how we look at that. So
we are.
That needs to be put out there that this, and we are and need to remain an import nation of people.
All of those things are real. Let's look at this last chart.
Yeah, so this is taking together our little banter session that we just had and putting it into chart form, because we do have jobs.
Yep.
Right? We do have migration and people are getting employed. But this is showing the total jobs growth. That's what it means. So from 2019, which is neutral, we then saw COVID, jobs were lost. Now we're seeing job expansion, just to give you an example of why that 100 point is there. So we've seen a 13.5% increase in job creation.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Normally you'd be championing that like tomorrow. And you can see jobs filled, which is additional jobs on top. It's also expanding. But the hours worked is all over the shot. It is not at the same level. So what that also means is that people have jobs, but they don't have enough work or want more work.
Yep.
It also means that the actual hours they're working productively is lower. So their productivity is lower. So the GDP figure, which is that solid figure, shows you very clearly that the output created through, even with the jobs creations we've had, is below. And so the final chart to go to now is, again, showing the decline in productivity from the output of labour. So we have great labour supply and hours worked, but the productivity per hour is negative. So it means that we are losing all of that. And it's hard to describe without going abstract. But again, it means that your household wealth is going backwards because the amount of output that you're doing is actually less than it used to be. Even though you're working the same amount, the amount of goods and services you're producing is negative. And I know you guys hate that. I know that term sounds awful, and it's true because, hang on, how am I less productive?
It's clear in construction. I mean, it's
correct.
Absolutely
much more measurable product, right?
Yeah, correct. And, like we produce so much, but we don't. Obviously we've got more work people in that workforce, but they're not producing as much. I mean, it's almost like it's been dormant in terms of the productivity in construction.
That's what the RBA, in their boffin language, say to us.
They're trying to be polite.
Well, I think they're trying to be what they all are, which is that they are trying to be market neutral, right? The thing that we keep hearing is government feeding us an arbitrary scenario. They have arbitrarily made inflation low at 2.1%. And the most recent forecast from the November Statement of Monetary Policy does not see inflation returning to sustainably midpoint targets until 2026. That there to me says that not only has nothing changed, they have once again come out and put their foot down and said, stop thinking that we are close. And it sucks to sit here and say it. And as I said to you, I'm going to sound like a Grinch. And I know I'm going to sound like a Grinch when I sit here and talk about this. It shows you very clearly that they are now basically constantly having to reinforce inflation psychology. If you keep spending, inflation will not get back to target until a year and a half from now. And that's the concern. So even though they've got three mandates, right? They have three mandates, which is the full prosperity of Australia, of the Australian people, the full employment of the Australian population, and price stability of the Australian dollar. That's inflation. That last one realistically remains number one priority of those three mandates.